Let's turn now to politics and get to our panel today. The Watson Consultants founding partner Darren Barnett and former Liberal MP Fiona Scott. Great to see you both. Darren, first to you. Negative gearing, this debate that's resumed once again. What are we seeing here? Is this a kite flying exercise?
Look, I think it is a kite flying exercise, Kieran, but I do wonder whether it was a sanctioned kite flying exercise. And I say that because yesterday was actually a very good day for the government. There were very good figures in terms of the inflation rate being back inside that band of 2 to 3%. That then invigorates a debate about whether there can be some cuts in official interest rates sooner rather than later. I don't think the timing of a negative gearing campaign on the same day as that was probably planned by the government. So yes, it's a kite flying exercise, but I don't think it was supposed to come out as soon as this.
Yeah, it does seem messy, Fiona Scott, doesn't it? And the fact that it distracts from what would have been otherwise some progress on the inflation front for the Treasurer.
Yeah, Kieran, look, there's a lot of ground for Labor to still make in the inflation space. But, I mean, it's just the same old Labor, isn't it? I mean, when they run out of ideas, they just come after other people's money. And in this space here, particularly around negative gearing, I mean, we've got some critical challenges in the housing supply market. We've really got to work out how we're going to increase the speed of getting housing stock to market, whether it's through brownfield or greenfield development. But this Labor government, also coming to government, made a lot of commitments to contractors out there building and supplying houses. They've spoken to the contractors and said that they were going to deliver things to make things easier for them to deliver their houses, to build more houses into the supply, and they haven't delivered. So we've got tradies out there that are struggling to build houses because they're forced into unfair contracts and then having to take on all of that risk. So Labor can look at some of the microeconomic reforms that they need to do here rather than just going for these big, broad brush approaches that they just continue to do.
When you look at the overall economic discussion right now, so much, Darren, rests on that inflation number. As we say, it's down. The headline rate was down to 2.7%. Underlying rate also down. But is it going to happen soon enough for them and mortgage holders, more importantly, to get rate relief before the election?
Well, so look, I think there's two distinct questions here. I think obviously homeowners, myself included, and probably everyone else on the panel, but we'd love to see a rate cut this calendar year. But equally, I think Michelle Bullock's commentary has been fairly cautious that we probably shouldn't expect anything too dramatic too soon. But in terms of the electoral cycle, we have until May. The likelihood of a rate cut before May certainly becomes much more likely now that the Fed in the US has cut interest rates. I know that they're not on the same cycle as us, but it makes it more likely. The government, I now think, will take its time, and they're trying to fill in the space between what's happened in the US, the inflation numbers, and what will occur in the economy later on. And I suspect the kite flying of negative gearing is one of those things to take the debate and talk about something else for a little while, and we're just waiting for the dust to settle.
Fiona, our viewers can see a shot there of the Perth Royal show, and that's where Peter Dutton's going to be speaking shortly. This has got him right back in the mix, hasn't it? The cost of living issue, the cost of housing more broadly. That's Tom White, the candidate for the seat of Curtin, up against Kate Chaney. We'll go to Peter Dutton in a moment, but Fiona, when it comes to this issue, it is such a potent one. If there's not a rate cut, you'd have to think Peter Dutton's right in the mix come the next election.
Yeah, look, the Coalition have been really consistent on this for a number of years, that going to this term of government, there were going to be some critical headwinds that the Labor Party would have to deal with, and frankly, they haven't. And, you know, we've seen the conversations around Coles and Woolies, and, you know, if you want cheaper groceries, you have to go to Aldi. Now, there's so many aspects of this that the cost of living is hurting people, whether it's things like the coal prices dropped, but now it's the infrastructure price of energy is high, whether it's the housing supply issues, whether it's, you know, petrol, all of these impacts are hurting Australians, and the continual blunt tool of keeping interest rate high for homeowners and it hurting young people getting into our housing market. You know, these are things that the Coalition is very strong on, and Peter Dutton for the last 2 years has been incredibly strong in these matters, and it's clear that the Australian public want to see these things fixed.
We talk a lot about the political strategies of both sides and whatever else, Fiona, but so much does rest on the independent and impartial RBA now, really, in terms of what it does. They've got to make the judgments on an economic basis, but they have huge political ramifications, don't they, over coming months?
Well, let's face it, there's fiscal policy and there's monetary policy, and if the fiscal settings aren't correct, then the monetary policy will have to take the burden of that. And you know what? The Labor Party have not done the correct reforms or the necessary reforms around the fiscal outcomes that allows the Reserve Bank to remove these pressures, which has kept inflation high, and therefore the RBA has remained high. So I agree with you, Kieran, they are politically neutral, but Labor are not neutral in this issue at the moment.
And we've seen it happen before, Darren. I remember, I'm sure you do too, 2007, Kevin Rudd won. The RBA hiked rates during that campaign, much to the annoyance of Peter Costello at the time. Darren, did you hear me? Sorry, no, we've lost him. We've lost Darren Barnett. Fiona, you pick it up there. Go
Well,
again.
look, it was a challenge back in 2007. It was a very complicated time, and it caused people on the Liberal side a huge anxiety going into that 2007 election with John Howard and Peter Costello. So you're right to raise that, Kieran, but I guess the shoe's on the other foot. We knew coming out of COVID that these environments were going to be challenging, and let's see what reforms the Labor Party can come up with.
I think we've got Peter Dutton speaking now. Let's go live. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you to Darren as well. We'll talk to you both next